It appears, Amit, Japan is betting big on India steel production capabilities as well as the semiconductor facility that we've been eyeing. Japan says they're going to make investments.
Yes, and the investments are to the tune of 5 trillion yen in the steel sector. The Indian steel sector, which stands at 160 million tons right now, is expected to grow to 300 million tons by 2030. So that is in the steel sector. The other place where Japan is following America, Micron had said that they will be investing 2.75 billion in chip assembly, testing, marking and packaging in a packaging unit. Japan is now coming to India with a big investment, and their strengths are silicon manufacturing, ingot manufacturing, display and equipment manufacturing. Those are the things that Japan brings to the table. What does India bring to the table? Qualified design engineers in numbers north of 50,000. So that is what India brings to the table. So that's where the marriage will be. Additionally, Japanese companies will be able to avail of the 76,000 crore subsidy that Indian government puts into the semiconductor sector. And Japanese companies like Sony, Kioxia, NEC corporations are amongst the few that will benefit from this scheme with the collaboration that is happening in the chip manufacturing sector in India. So it was first assembly, testing, marking, packaging that came from Micron, and now the manufacturing side of display equipment, ingots, silicon wafers, that is coming from Japan. So it's going to be a complete rounded industry if it happens in the times to come.
Okay. Japan becomes the second Quad country after US to sign a pact with India to make semiconductors. Now, India is going all guns blazing, asking private sector to heavily invest, inking MOUs, partnerships. I think we don't want to be a laggard in chip making. We already are at this juncture, but we don't want to be a laggard for far too soon. And could this deal with Japan or MOU with Japan change our fortune, turn around our fortune anytime soon, Karthik? Or am I being too optimistic?
No, I think you're being cautiously optimistic.
Thanks for that.
I think, see, the Micron plant, which is primarily an assembly and packaging plant, is likely to be up and running by December this year, right? At least that is what the MOS for IT electronics, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar has gone on record to say that December 2024, sorry, not this year, December 2024 next year is when the Micron plant, which is primarily going to be an assembly plant, is going to be up and running. And we are hoping that there are going to be another 6 plants or so which are going to come into India. Their announcements should happen in a year or so, right? So within a year, we will have at least 6 more partners with signed agreements, with contracts in place, coming and investing in India. Now, what does Japan bring to the table? Of course, Amit told us it's design, but I think along with design, the focus that Japan has on manufacturing of silicon wafers, right? So it's silicon wafers. And these silicon wafers, of course, are the bedrock. They are pretty much, the base on which semiconductors are built. So it brings this to the table, and it brings display equipment and gases, right? Which is in line with what, let's say, Allied Industries, which was the other sort of big deal announced when Prime Minister Modi was in the US. Allied Industries is also in the display units and the gases business. So that is the second thing that Japan brings. But what we don't have access to still, I think, is gallium and germanium and germanium. I'm sorry, and I think that is where China continues to hold on to its territory and its precious metals in that sense. So I think that is still going to be a tough fight. So India will have to very clearly understand that what does make in India semiconductors really entail? Is it going to be assembly of semiconductors?
Or just design?
Is it going to be design of semiconductors? Is it going to be a complete technology transfer where these 50,000 upwards of skilled engineers in India will actually be able to improve upon, build upon? And therein also lies another story, Shweta, about what are the specifications of the semiconductors that India is going to make. So are we going to be able to build 28 nm nanometer semiconductors already? It seems that this Japan pact is going to enable India to build the 28 nm microchips.
They are concentrating on that.
Right. But I think right now India is still hoping, at least with Foxconn Vedanta deal also falling through, both players looking for technology partners to establish, their own manufacturing units in India. I think these Japanese companies are likely to partner with Vedanta at one end, with Foxconn at one end, with Micron at another end when it puts its own assembly plant in India. But I think the game is still going to be about agility. The game is going to be about swiftness, because the rate at which semiconductors are getting developed, their designs are undergoing change, their microns are reducing in nanometers every day, because the form factor is changing. You want smaller devices, you want more portable stuff, you want lighter electronics. All of these eventually mean your semiconductors will have to keep shrinking and deliver more and more power. So it comes down to whether we will be first movers or innovators or early adopters in new technology, or whether our present laggard status will help us develop mass scale products, 40 nanometers and more, which may see a dwindling demand from the world going forward. So I think we'll have to balance this and get our expectations very squarely in place to understand where we want to head. Do we want to be innovators in the semiconductor business and become self-reliant, which in any case is going to be difficult because we don't have access to all the raw materials, or are we happy being a manufacturing, assembly line, packaging sort of a player where we still serve the rest of the world with whatever other technology players and other semiconductor experts from the world are coming and assembling in India? I think there is merit in exploring either of the two, but we should not fool ourselves to assume that we are going to overnight become semiconductor hotbeds for the world. I don't think that is going to happen.
Absolutely. It's an important bet, but where do you go from here into design or into making? I think that is something where India will have to thoughtfully, and I'm sure this is happening thoughtfully, and India, of course, is looking at more and more partners. And Japan specifically, yes. Amit.
What India is betting on is basically cost effectiveness for all these companies that are coming to it. I think that is where India will score. Or will, so that can be
mass production essentially what
but even of new technologies, even of even when it comes like Allied is even coming with research and development into India. So that is an up. I hope that happens.
My only fear is that if you end up repeating what China has done for the world, and China has done it very successfully, and now the world has seen that model. You don't want to be restricted to being an assembly line operation only, because tomorrow nothing stops even a country like Vietnam or Philippines to take over that business. Remember, their populations are growing almost at the same clip as India's. These are countries which want to immediately strengthen their positions in the Asian space, in the global space, and there is going to be so anything which is easy to do, which gives you a cost arbitrage by access to land and cheap labor, is easy to replicate for any developing country, right? And it's again going to be about speed. How quickly can you change policies, attract assembly lines to come set up shop, and there you go. You can start producing immediately. I think the real game changer is going to be in terms of innovation, which is where India needs to look at US and Japan and not China specifically as models to ape. That you are producing, you're designing and creating patented next generation stuff which is going to define technology of tomorrow,
so
rather than replicating what somebody can do at a price more expensive or cheaper than yours. That is where the game is going to change.
Right, you're innovating rather than replicating. India's semiconductor story and the strides that India continues to make, if at all, will have any long-term repercussions or not, we will bring you all those details.